Hello and welcome. My name is Christina from Empowered Creator. I am a mindset and conscious manifesting teacher and coach, and this is my YouTube channel. Here I talk about all things law of assumption, mindset, conscious manifesting, the quantum universe, and a lot more. And my goal is to simplify everything without the fluff. So if you guys like this content and you would like to see more of it, I would love it if you would subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, like it, share it, and stick around. Also, if you need help with your specific situation, I offer one-on-one coaching as well as custom subliminals for whatever needs you may have. I also have some self-study courses about manifesting your specific person. So if you're interested in any of these services, the links are below in the description box. Click on them and they're going to take you to my website. With all that being said, let's dive into today's video. In today's video, I want to offer you guys my personal account and my personal experience in overcoming my anxious attachment in my romantic relationships and transforming it into a much more secure attachment, which ended up radically, and I mean radically, transforming my relationships. So I wanted to relay my own experience to help all of you guys who might be struggling with similar issues. And I know a lot of the people who are manifesting, especially romantic relationships or a specific person who follow the manifesting community, actually fall into this category of anxiously attached people. So I'm hoping my personal experience will help you and inspire you and motivate you to transform yourself as well. So this is what I'll be discussing in today's video. Stay tuned. So as I just said in my intro, a lot of people in the manifesting community, especially the people who are manifesting a specific person, the people who are manifesting new romantic love, or the people who have a pattern of relationship after relationship failing and they can't really pinpoint why, or why they keep meeting new people and getting involved with new people, and then the same story plays out with every new person, essentially same story, different person. Through my experience and my conversations with a lot of people and all the coaching I'm doing, I see that a lot of these people, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of these people actually fall into the category of being anxiously attached in their romantic relationships. That means that deep down you have a fear of abandonment, a fear of rejection by your specific person. And when things feel insecure in your relationship, whether because your SP did something or said something, or maybe just because of your own fears and your own insecurities, you are looking at them to give you validation. And you might be doing that in many different ways. For example, you might be trying to play games with them. You might try to play hard to get. You might try to make them jealous and elicit a reaction from them. Or you might be doing the opposite. You might be adopting extreme people-pleasing behaviors, becoming a doormat, giving them whatever they want or telling them whatever you think they want to hear in order to get their approval and to ease your own fear that they might reject you otherwise. You may also be clinging to them, calling them 100 times a day, wanting them to text you all the time. If you don't hear from them for like 2-3 hours, you freak out and you start thinking the worst, and you start thinking that they're rejecting you, that they're ignoring you, that they're going to leave you, and you start playing all these catastrophic scenarios in your head. Or you may be creating scenes and throwing tantrums all the time because you don't know how else to regulate your own emotions. Or instead, you may be treating them with a silent treatment. But again, that is intended to prompt them to pursue you and come after you and essentially validate you. All these behaviors and others similar to them come from an anxious attachment style. And unfortunately, what they do is that eventually they drive a relationship to the ground. Because what you're projecting to your person, however much they might love you in the beginning, is that you're insecure about them, you don't trust them, you don't trust in their love, you don't think that you're lovable, you think that they're going to reject you, you think that they're going to leave you. And so you're acting and reacting accordingly in the 3D, hoping for their validation, constantly seeking their validation, constantly seeking their confirmation. And at some point, you guys, unfortunately, that becomes too much for most people. So you might start seeing your relationship going south. And then the problem with that is that it's a vicious cycle, because then that makes you react even more and throw even more tantrums and cling on to them even more and seek even more validation and become even more extreme in the ways you react. And of course, in turn, that makes things go even worse, and so on. You get the gist until one day the relationship breaks down. So if you recognize a similar pattern in yourself, especially if you have a similar pattern in all your relationships throughout your life, then here is what I did to start transforming myself from an anxiously attached person in my romantic relationships to a securely attached person. And how I have seen an amazing difference in my relationships and in how others perceive me, in how others show up for me. Obviously now my husband, but even before my husband, the boyfriend that I had, and how different these two relationships were from previous relationships where I was exhibiting the typical signs of an anxiously attached person without even knowing it at that time. So once I became consciously aware of how I was showing up in the 3D, that I was exhibiting behaviors that showed an extreme need for confirmation and validation, that I was exhibiting insecure behaviors, that I was a lot of the time putting my life on hold for the other person. Essentially, I would stop having a life of my own and I would make my life revolve around my boyfriend's life and around his schedule. And I know watching me now and seeing and hearing all the things I teach, it might be hard to believe, but this is exactly because of the amount of inner work that I have done to overcome all this and to overcome all these patterns. And then also, if I didn't hear, for example, from my boyfriend for several hours or for half a day, I would start to freak out. If I called them or texted them and they weren't responding fast enough or what I perceived as fast enough, I would start getting anxious and upset and I would start catastrophizing in my head. And in short, a lot of my reactions and a lot of my thoughts and my general state was very, very similar to what I just described earlier in this video about the traits and the characteristics of someone who is anxiously attached in a relationship. So once I started realizing and putting my consciousness and my awareness on what I was doing and how I was sabotaging my own relationship and my own self and my own success in relationships, because not surprisingly, a lot of my ex-boyfriends actually broke up with me because I would become too much for them. So once I then became aware of what I was doing and how I was destroying my own relationships and working against my own self and against my own best interests, I started consciously observing my reactions to the 3D. I started observing what I was doing. I started observing how I was reacting. I started observing the meaning I was giving to whatever popped up in the 3D, whether someone took a while to respond to me, or maybe they canceled the date, or if they didn't say I love you 10 times in a day, or whatever that was. I started observing the meanings I was giving to that and what I would make it mean in relation to myself. And I started, over some time, reframing all those events and those incidents. I started giving them a different meaning. I started not taking them personally anymore. I started reasoning with myself and loving myself more and explaining to myself that there was no reason for me to be insecure, that I had no reason to believe that my boyfriend at the time did not love me, did not want to be with me, was rejecting me, was going to leave me, and so on. I started changing my reactions to the 3D, whereas before I might have freaked out if I didn't hear from him for, let's say, several hours, to instead telling myself, okay, maybe he's busy, maybe he's overwhelmed, he will contact me as soon as he's able to. I started putting more trust into my relationships and into the people that I was involved with. I started deliberately and purposefully not assuming the worst about them and about me and about the relationship. I started calming myself down and self-soothing and self-regulating instead of always clinging onto a boyfriend to soothe me and to help me self-regulate and to validate me and to give me confirmation. I started putting my awareness to all the stories I was making with my mind that didn't serve me and, by the way, for the most part, were not even true. But the interesting thing is, as you know, when you believe something to be true, eventually it becomes true in the 3D as well. So I started putting my awareness in all those stories that I was making with my head that didn't serve me. And I started deliberately overturning them. I started deliberately challenging them and questioning them. And instead, saturating myself and saturating my mind with the alternative. I started feeling loved. I started feeling more secure within myself. I started loving myself more. I started taking care of myself more. And I don't mean physically, I mean mostly emotionally and mentally. I started deliberately cultivating more of a security, more of an inner security about my person and my relationship and how they were going to show up and how they were going to treat me and so on. And you know what ended up happening, guys? This started to come true. This started to play out for me. The relationships I got into started being much more emotionally mature. They started being much more stable. And interestingly, I started getting all the validation and all the confirmation that I had previously craved and chased without craving it or chasing it or grasping for it anymore. Because as we all know, this is how consciousness works. Whatever is in your consciousness, whatever meaning you give to things, whatever ways you perceive the 3D, that is what you're going to experience. And that is what the 3D, including other people, are going to reflect back to you. So if you feel that you're somewhere in the anxious attachment spectrum, obviously there is hope. Obviously, there are a lot of things that you can do to improve your attachment style and to transcend the anxious attachment style and to transform it into a more secure attachment style. And it's absolutely to your benefit to do that. You are going to see a huge transformation in your relationships. And so start observing your reactions, start observing your perceptions, start observing the stories that you're forming in your head about things, people, relationships, and so on. Start observing the meanings you give to things and the labels you're attaching to them. And start working also on your skills of self-soothing, self-regulating, cultivating that inner security, cultivating that inner love, and not exclusively depending on other people and on the external to validate you and to confirm to you that you are loved. You need to feel first within yourself that you are loved and you are wanted, and feel the security of that, the inner security of that. And believe me, people are going to reflect that back to you. With all that being said, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I intend that this has helped. As always, I very much appreciate you guys being on this channel, watching this content. I love making this content for you. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all at the next video. Until then, take care and bye-bye.